before we jump in, now that you found us, subscribe and turn on notifications by clicking the bell. No need to miss out on any upcoming deep dives. Because, right now, somewhere in a massively cool data center, an AI agent is scanning 40-year-old Apple II assembly code.
Right.
And it's just casually spotting these critical vulnerabilities that human hackers completely missed back in, 1982.
It's incredible.
And at the exact same moment, there was a $5,000 autonomous robotic factory prepping to mine lunar regolith. We are watching the Singularity literally spill out of the server rack. It's bleeding into our history, our physical infrastructure, biology, and quite literally into orbit.
Yeah, it is a profound structural pivot. I mean, we are no longer talking about intelligence as a novelty or just, a localized software tool. We're watching human systems frantically restructure themselves to treat agentic intelligence as a base utility.
Like electricity.
Exactly. Fundamentally indistinguishable from electricity or municipal water. And the friction of that transition is just tearing up all the old maps.
Well, today's deep dive is an absolute treat for those of you who follow Dr. Alex Wisner-Gross and his phenomenal, just mind-expanding contributions to Peter Diamandis' Moonshot series. We are pulling apart his March 12, 2026 post from his Substack, The Innermost Loop.
A great piece.
Oh, it's so good. The title alone is a thesis statement, right? It's called The Singularity is Benchmarking Itself, Self-Improving Code and Self-Building Moon Factories. So our mission today is to trace this concept of recursion across entirely different substrates. And, the recursion absolutely begins in the software layer, right? AI upgrading AI.
Right.
Dr. Wisner-Gross highlights that the Singularity is now running its own diagnostics. Specifically, he points to the new PostTrainBench version 1.0 benchmark,
which completely upends the traditional machine learning pipeline. I mean, for years, the bottleneck in AI development wasn't just raw compute. It was the human-in-the-loop post-training.
The biological bottleneck.
Exactly. You pre-train a massive foundation model, but then you need armies of human annotators for supervised fine-tuning and reinforcement learning from human feedback.
All right, RLHF, which takes forever.
It's incredibly slow. It's biologically gated labor. So PostTrainBench v1.0 tests whether large language model agents can just automate that entire secondary process themselves. Can they synthesize their own preference data, critique their own outputs, and, update their own weights without a human getting the homework?
Okay, let's unpack this, because the winner of that benchmark is Claude Opus 4.6, operating through Claude Code. It's autonomously patching its own cognitive blind spots. But what you really have to wonder here is if the model is generating its own reward signals and grading its own benchmarks, how do we establish any, epistemic certainty that its improvements align with our reality?
That's the big question.
It feels like we're trusting a student who has not only learned to grade their own tests, but is now inventing entirely new branches of physics that the teacher doesn't possess the math to understand.
Yeah, that is the defining philosophical and mathematical dilemma of recursive self-improvement. We are shifting from active evaluation to mere observation. But what's fascinating here is that the underlying math relies on the model's ability to simulate environments with incredibly high fidelity.
Right.
If Claude Opus 4.6 can generate a synthetic test case, say, a complex logic puzzle, or a deep software architecture problem, and computationally verify the outcome of its own solution against a compiler or a physics engine, it grounds its self-improvement in objective truth, not just human heuristics.
So it completely bypasses our cognitive limits.
Entirely. It doesn't need us to tell it if the code works, because the compiler tells it.
And the economic floor is just falling out from it at the cost of this logic. Sam Altman just revealed that solving a hard reasoning problem is now 1,000 times cheaper than it was just 16 months ago.
That number is still hard to process.
It's wild. He drew a direct line from the original O1 model to the brand new GPT 5.4 model, 1,000 times cheaper. When the cost of reasoning drops that precipitously, we are looking at a massive Jevons Paradox scenario, right? You don't just use the same amount of reasoning for less money.
No, you induce an explosion in the demand for reasoning.
Exactly. You start applying deep logic to completely trivial problems.
A 1000x cost reduction alters the fundamental physics of software engineering. You stop asking an AI for a single deterministic answer. At fractions of a cent, you can afford to instruct the agent to generate 10,000 divergent solutions.
Wow.
You have it aggressively debate itself in a multi-agent adversarial network, simulate millions of edge cases, and seamlessly compile the surviving logic.
Yeah.
It makes brute force cognitive exploration economically trivial.
Which ties directly into NVIDIA's latest revelation. They've stated definitively that there is no wall in post-training, and they backed it up by dropping Nemotron 3 Super. And this architecture is wild.
It really is.
Nemotron 3 Super is a 120 billion parameter hybrid SSM latent MOE. And NVIDIA designed it explicitly for their new Blackwell hardware architecture. What really stands out to me, though, is how they've open-sourced this.
Permissive licensing, open data, open training infrastructure, the whole package.
Yeah, but let's get into the mechanics of this hybrid approach. Using a state space model, or SSM, rather than relying purely on the traditional transformer architecture we've seen dominate for, the last 5 years?
Yeah, about that. And the math behind SSMs is what makes this continuous scaling possible. Transformers suffer from a quadratic bottleneck. As the context window grows, say you feed it millions of lines of code, the memory and compute required to calculate the attention mechanism explode exponentially.
It just melts the GPUs.
Basically, yes. State space models, which are derived from control theory, linearize that process. They map the sequence through hidden states that compress the historical context mathematically.
Okay, so what does that mean in practice?
It means Nemotron 3 Super can maintain coherence over massive, practically infinite context windows without its memory demands bursting into flames.
Right, and then they layer in latent mixture of experts, or MOE. Because instead of a standard MOE where tokens are routed to discrete, siloed neural networks based on human-defined categorizations, latent MOE operates in a continuous vector space.
Exactly.
It routes the compute dynamically at the token level, meaning out of the 120 billion total parameters, only 12 billion are active at any given nanosecond. It's not just energy efficient, it's computationally elegant.
It's a huge leap.
It's like a massive fiber optic network, dynamically rerouting light pulses around traffic bottlenecks in real time, rather than spinning up dedicated servers for every single data packet.
That routing efficiency is precisely why scaling reinforcement learning continues to yield these massive gains. NVIDIA is proving that once the architecture can efficiently manage its own active parameters and context limits, those self-training loops we discussed earlier can just run indefinitely. The model continuously refines its own routing algorithms.
So we have this forward-looking recursion, architectures optimizing their own future states. But what Dr. Wisner-Gross points out next is that this intelligence is omnidirectional.
Right, it goes both ways.
It's looking backward with just as much intensity. The Archaeology of Code, Claude Opus 4.6, just discovered new, highly critical vulnerabilities in 40-year-old Apple II code.
The implication here goes far beyond a fun retro computing fact. It demonstrates an unprecedented cross-temporal pattern recognition. To find a zero-day exploit in 1980s machine code, the AI isn't just parsing syntax.
So?
It is reverse engineering the foundational logic of early silicon. It is understanding memory offsets, register limits, and hardware-specific buffer overflows of the old MOS 6502 processor. And it's holding the entire operating system architecture in its context window simultaneously.
It's just crawling through the foundational bedrock of our digital civilization. I mean, decades of obsessive human hackers, cybersecurity experts, and engineers have picked over that code line by line, right? And the AI just sweeps its flashlight across the assembly language and spawns structural flaws we didn't have the cognitive bandwidth to perceive.
It's humbling, honestly.
And this level of pervasive intelligence is now being completely integrated into the commercial ecosystem. OpenAI is reportedly embedding Sora, their video generation model, directly into ChatGPT.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Codex, their coding model, crossed $1 billion in annual recurring revenue this past January.
1 billion ARR for a single AI agent.
Yeah, which proves the agentic economy is no longer a speculative bubble. The market is absorbing and deploying this intelligence at a massive scale. But within this macro-level integration, there is this micro-interaction detail in the source material that is deeply revealing about the psychological friction between us, the biological humans, and the agentic code.
Anthropic's new command for Claude Code.
Yes, the /BTW command.
Yeah.
Literally, by the way.
Yeah, the B2 command. When you deploy an autonomous agent like Claude Code, it operates asynchronously. You give it a massive architectural task, and it just goes into the background, recursively writing and testing code at gigahertz speeds.
Right.
But human cognition doesn't work like a batch processing terminal. We require non-transactional space. We have stray thoughts, contextual shifts, and just this basic need for social friction.
It's the digital equivalent of the water cooler. Because if you have an AI acting as your pair programmer and it's executing tasks flawlessly and silently, it creates an incredibly alienating workspace.
It feels cold.
Super cold. Here's where it gets really interesting, though. The B2 command allows you to open a sidechain parallel thread with the AI. You can brainstorm, voice a tangent, or just talk through a secondary problem without interrupting the agent's primary compilation processes. We are humanizing the code just as the code starts writing itself.
Anthropic is intentionally designing psychological friction into the interface. They are acknowledging that maximizing pure computational efficiency actually degrades human collaborative output. We need the illusion of a shared cognitive rhythm.
Yeah.
By allowing this asynchronous multi-threading, they bridge the biological pace of human thought with the alien speed of machine execution, making the AI palatable to human developers who would otherwise feel overwhelmed or, frankly, marginalized by the tool they were supposed to be directing.
But, when you zoom out from a single developer chatting with their AI and you look at the macroeconomy, that friction isn't just a quirky psychological feature anymore.
No, it becomes systemic.
Right. It becomes systemic organizational inflammation. The boundaries of the human economy are violently pushing back against these autonomous agents. Dr. Wisner-Gross catalogs a series of massive structural collisions here. Let's look at the legal system. Amazon just won a temporary injunction against Perplexity's Comet AI browser.
This injunction forces a reevaluation of the legal frameworks governing the internet. Now, keeping strictly to what the source reports, Comet AI isn't a traditional web crawler indexing links for a search engine. It is an agentic browser.
It does the reading for you.
It navigates, reads, synthesizes, and extracts the core value of a proprietary ecosystem without ever returning a human user to the original monetization structure. Amazon's argument is fundamentally about the rights of silicon actors versus biological actors.
Oh, yeah.
A human reading a web page and summarizing it is fair use. An AI agent executing that same cognitive function at scale is viewed as a parasitic extraction of capital.
And again, we are entirely impartial here, not taking sides in this legal warfare at all. But just looking at the facts presented, you can see the foundational definitions of copyright, scraping, and fair use just collapsing under the weight of agentic behavior.
It's an immune response from the legacy economy.
Absolutely an immune response. And you see it in the verification of reality, too. YouTube is aggressively expanding its deepfake likeness detection. Officials, journalists, and politicians can now request the immediate removal of AI-generated content that mimics their likeness or voice.
Cryptographic verification of human identity is becoming mandatory infrastructure. When the cost of generating high-fidelity, photorealistic video and audio drops to basically zero, the signal-to-noise ratio of public information approaches zero as well.
Right.
YouTube's policy is a defensive perimeter. They are attempting to establish a definitive chain of custody for human identity in a media ecosystem saturated by synthetic generation. And just reporting neutrally on the international stage, the pushback is happening at the nation-state level, too.
Yeah, authorities in China have explicitly restricted OpenClaw AI apps at state enterprises and government agencies,
citing severe security risks.
Right. They were looking at the autonomous navigation capabilities of these agents and realizing that introducing them into highly secure air-gapped environments creates uncontrollable vectors for data exfiltration. The agents are just too independent. And on the corporate labor front, Tesla's Digital Optimus AI worker is reportedly stepping in to replace xAI's MacroHeart project, which apparently stalled out.
If you aggregate these signals, Amazon's legal injunction, YouTube's identity verification, China's strict state-level restrictions, and Tesla's internal shifting of AI labor, the narrative is very cohesive. Our legacy systems, legal, diplomatic, and corporate, were exclusively designed for biological actors operating at biological speeds.
Human speeds.
Right. Injecting high-speed autonomous agents into this legacy code base causes system-wide cascading errors.
And the human cost of these cascading errors is brutally stark. I mean, Atlassian just slashed 10% of its global workforce. That is 1,600 human jobs eliminated. And the explicit stated reason wasn't a market downturn.
No, it was structural.
Right, it was to self-fund AI and enterprise sales investments. They literally substituted 1,600 human salaries for raw compute capacity and AI infrastructure. It is the rawest demonstration of capital reallocation.
It illustrates the transition of intelligence into a base utility. In the boardrooms of enterprise software companies, human operational expense is now being directly weighed against computational capital expenditure.
That's a terrifying thought for a lot of people.
It is. For Atlassian, acquiring more H100 GPUs or leasing inference time on massive foundation models yields a higher, more predictable return on investment than retaining middle-tier biological labor.
Which fundamentally alters the power dynamics for the humans who are retained. Think about how this impacts you and your workflow if you are a top-tier tech worker today. Dr. Wisner-Gross highlights that candidates are now fiercely negotiating AI compute budgets as a formalized fourth-line item in their compensation packages. It's base salary, performance bonus, equity, and compute.
It is entirely rational. If you are an elite software engineer or a quantitative analyst, your personal output is heavily multiplied by the intelligence tools at your disposal.
Obviously.
So if you accept a role at a firm that restricts your API calls or denies you access to the latest models like GPT 5.4, your productivity and therefore your market value atrophies. A guaranteed compute budget ensures you have the capital necessary to leverage your own biological intelligence. Compute is now the primary bottleneck to human leverage.
You essentially have candidates walking into interviews saying, I require a $250,000 base and guaranteed priority access to a dedicated inference cluster, or I just can't do the job. And we are arguably just at the foothills of this curve. Jack Clark, leading the newly launched Anthropic Institute, is publicly predicting far more dramatic progress within the next 2 years.
Jack Clark's analysis has historically been devoid of hyperbole. When the Anthropic Institute signals dramatic progress, they're pointing directly back to the self-improving recursion of PostTrainBench.
The AI upgrading the AI.
Exactly. Training the models are about to cross thresholds of abstraction that our current economic models simply cannot price in.
And this acceleration is violently pushing intelligence out of the digital realm and into entirely new physical substrates.
Yeah.
We aren't just talking about optimizing Python scripts anymore. AI is fundamentally rewriting the hard sciences.
Yes.
Let's look at biology. A consortium of researchers just published a landmark paper where they took a genetically minimal cell and brought it to life on a computer in 4D.
The jump to a 4D spatial and kinetic model is a staggering computational achievement. This isn't a static three-dimensional topological map.
The fourth dimension is time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They have simulated the entirety of the molecular dynamics, the transcription of genetic data, the kinetic folding of proteins, the exact consumption of ATP during metabolism, and the physical division of the lipid bilayer across a full life cycle.
That's just wild.
It requires assimilating vast, disparate arrays of crystallographic, genomic, and chemical data, mapping the complex interactions of millions of individual atoms simultaneously. No human mind, or even a team of human minds, can hold that kinetic architecture in their head.
It's a digital twin of biological life at the atomic level. Because it exists in silico, an AI agent can run thousands of accelerated evolutionary cycles, tweaking single amino acids and observing the macrocellular effects in real time. But it gets crazier.
Because it doesn't stay in the computer.
Exactly. It doesn't stay in the computer. Princeton just dropped LabClaw. This is a library of 206 agentic skills for autonomous biomedical research. Dr. Wisner-Gross notes it literally turns the physical wet lab into a software API.
Let's consider the mechanics of that translation. LabClaw serves as the compiler between abstract Python code and physical reality. An AI agent doesn't just write a theoretical protocol. It issues an API call that physically actuates automated fluidic pumps, calibrates mass spectrometers, and operates robotic pipettes. The AI monitors the thermal sensors, adjusts the reagent flow dynamically based on real-time feedback loops, and synthesizes the physical compounds. Biology is no longer an observational science. It is a branch of executable computer science.
So what does this all mean? For you listening, if an agent simulates the cellular metabolism in 4D, identifies a novel protein inhibitor, writes the experimental protocol, and then uses LabClaw to physically synthesize and test that inhibitor in a real-world lab without a human ever putting on a pair of gloves.
The epistemic boundary of what a human scientist even does is shifting.
We become orchestrators of intent.
We set the parameters, and the AI handles the mechanics of physical discovery. And it's not just biology. Mathematics is undergoing the exact same structural collapse. Epoch AI's investigation into the GPT 5.4 Pro model, solving a frontier math open problem, is a prime indicator. Frontier math isn't about massive numerical crunching. These are the bleeding-edge, unsolved, abstract proofs of human mathematics. Problems requiring profound conceptual leaps and the invention of entirely new heuristic frameworks.
If an AI model is generating net new, fundamental logic that human mathematicians have spent their entire careers failing to grasp, it means the system is no longer just a sophisticated parrot of human data. It is exploring mathematical space that is completely alien to us. But to run these massive 4D cellular simulations, to actuate hundreds of physical lab environments, to map unexplored mathematical dimensions, you run headfirst into the laws of thermodynamics. The physical plant required to supply this singularity is demanding an unimaginable scale of infrastructure.
The ethereal concept of the cloud is an illusion. Intelligence requires massive industrial hardware, immense cooling systems, and raw baseload energy. The physical plant of intelligence is currently undergoing the most aggressive scaling in human history.
The numbers are legitimately hard to comprehend. AT&T just committed more than $250 billion over the next 5 years.
$250 billion.
$250 billion, specifically for expanding U.S. network infrastructure and hiring. They are building the high-bandwidth fiber optic nervous system required to handle the data transmission of billions of continuous agentic API calls.
And that $250 billion is just the circulatory system. Look at the compute generation layer. NVIDIA is investing $2 billion into Nebius to deploy over 5 gigawatts of systems by 2030.
5 gigawatts.
To contextualize that scale, 5 gigawatts is roughly the output of 5 large-scale nuclear reactors, completely dedicated to raw compute capacity. We are rapidly approaching a reality where the energy required to simulate intelligence, or to simulate the 4D physics of reality itself, rivals the energy consumption of entire industrialized nations.
Unbelievable.
Silicon, power grids, and telecom networks are mutating into a single unified utility grid for intelligence.
And the architecture of the silicon itself is transforming to handle the specific bottlenecks of these autonomous agents. Intel just demonstrated their Heracles architecture, which accelerates fully homomorphic encryption, or FHE, by 5,000 times over top-tier server CPUs.
Okay.
Let's dig into FHE because the computational overhead of this has historically been a massive roadblock.
It has.
FHE allows a computer to perform complex math on data, while that data remains completely encrypted.
It is the cryptographic holy grail. Historically, if you wanted an AI to analyze highly sensitive data, say proprietary corporate financials or a patient's genomic sequence, you had to decrypt the data at the compute layer, exposing it to potential breaches or side channel attacks.
Which is terrifying for enterprises.
Exactly. FHE uses lattice-based cryptography, specifically ring learning with errors, to allow operations directly on the ciphertext. The math is mapped into high-dimensional lattices where the algebraic structure is preserved even when obscured by cryptographic noise.
Okay, so the AI is processing the logic without ever actually seeing the plaintext data. But the problem has always been that the noise in those lattices grows with every computational step, right? And managing that noise takes an insane amount of processing power, making it completely impractical for real-time AI.
Precisely. The noise budget in homomorphic operations means that performing a simple calculation can take thousands of times longer than in plaintext. What Intel's Heracles architecture does is embed the noise reduction and ciphertext maintenance directly into the hardware layer.
Which gives us that 5,000x acceleration.
Right. It means FHE is no longer a theoretical cryptographic curiosity. It is now practically deployable for real-time AI agents. It completely removes the security friction. Autonomous agents can now process your most secure biometric or banking data at gigahertz speeds with zero-day exposure.
And the hardware deployment is racing across the entire spectrum. Meta is prepping 4 entirely new generations of AI chips by 2027, aggressively iterating their custom silicon to escape dependency on external supply chains. Meanwhile, Apple just sent a shockwave through the consumer hardware industry. They dropped a $599 MacBook Neo alongside an upcoming folding iPhone that unfolds into a full iPad interface mini.
Apple's strategic maneuvering here is vital. While companies like NVIDIA, Meta, and Intel are pouring hundreds of billions into centralized gigawatt-scale server infrastructure, Apple is aggressively democratizing the edge.
Right.
By pricing the MacBook Neo at $599, they are ensuring that the local terminal, the hardware interface required to access this massive global intelligence network, is ubiquitous. They are subsidizing the local compute required to run heavily compressed, localized agentic models that interface seamlessly with the centralized grid.
It's the electrification of the globe all over again. The centralized power plants are the 5 gigawatt NVIDIA clusters, and the $599 MacBook Neo is the light bulb in your living room. And it's altering physical geography as well. Zoox is deploying its Amazon-owned robotaxis onto the Uber app in Las Vegas later this year.
Merging digital intelligence with physical transit.
Yes. The digital agents aren't just in our laptops, they are physically driving us through our cities. The integration of silicon and asphalt is happening.
The terrestrial integration is accelerating exponentially. We are wrapping the Earth in a dense mesh of data centers, fiber optics, edge compute devices, and autonomous kinetics. But the ultimate constraint of the singularity isn't just power or silicon.
No.
It is physical space. As Dr. Wisner-Gross outlines in the final movement of his analysis, the Earth itself is rapidly becoming an insufficient substrate for this intelligence explosion.
Pushing outward. The cosmos is getting incredibly crowded, and the timeline is collapsing. NASA's administrator has publicly stated a greater than 90% confidence that the upcoming Mars sample return will contain definitive evidence of microbial life.
We should not gloss over the magnitude of that statement.
No, not at all.
A 90% probabilistic assessment of extraterrestrial biology from the head of NASA fundamentally shatters our anthropocentric view of life. If biology is proven to be an emergent property of the universe rather than a terrestrial anomaly, it shifts the entire philosophical foundation of what this intelligence explosion might eventually encounter or assimilate.
And we are building the orbital infrastructure to match that outward expansion. The FCC chair recently heavily criticized Amazon for unacceptable delays in their satellite launch schedule. And the reason for the pressure? Because SpaceX has filed plans for up to 1 million satellites. 1 million.
Connecting the terrestrial telecom investments like AT&T's $250 billion with SpaceX's orbital ambitions reveals the true architecture. We are not just building a planetary nervous system, we're constructing a high-bandwidth orbital brain.
Wow.
A constellation of 1 million satellites in low Earth orbit provides zero-latency, continuous intelligence access to every single square meter of the Earth's surface. It creates an inescapable, omnipresent connectivity layer, rendering terrestrial borders computationally irrelevant.
But the absolute crown jewel of this outward push, the detail in the Substack post that is just relentlessly fascinating, is happening on the moon. GRU Space just built the world's first moon factory, and they did it for under $5,000. Under $5,000 to manufacture an autonomous facility capable of operating in a vacuum.
It represents a complete inversion of aerospace economics. Historically, the physics of off-world manufacturing, the sheer cost of escaping Earth's gravity well, the delta V requirements made lunar construction a multi-billion-dollar sovereign endeavor.
And this factory is designed to autonomously mine lunar regolith, the abrasive, electrostatically charged moon dirt, and process it into structural bricks for lunar hotels. Think about the symmetry here. It is physical recursion.
Exactly. It perfectly mirrors the software recursion of Claude Opus 4.6 that we discussed at the top of the hour.
Okay.
You launch a lightweight $5,000 autonomous seed factory to the moon. It utilizes the local substrate, the regolith, to construct more infrastructure, expanding its physical footprint autonomously.
Incredible.
It is automated physical matter manipulating more matter to build habitats, operating on the exact same recursive principles as an LLM writing synthetic data to improve its own cognitive architecture.
Self-building moon factories. It's happening right now. But amidst all of this definitive hard science, the FHE acceleration, the 4D cell simulations, the orbital meshes, and lunar autonomous mining, Dr. Wisner-Gross concludes the post by dropping in a real-world mystery that feels violently disjointed from the rest of the data, yet perfectly fitting with this timeline.
The disappearance of retired Major General William McCasland.
Yes. The FBI has officially joined the search for General McCasland, who has been missing for nearly 2 weeks. This is a man who commanded the Air Force Research Laboratory at Wright-Patterson, directing the absolute bleeding edge of classified aerospace research. And subsequently, he was deeply associated with the UAP Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena disclosure firm To the Stars, Inc.
The juxtaposition is stark. We are transparently tracking the open-source mathematics of the singularity, quantifying the gigawatts and the lattice cryptography. Yet, simultaneously, a central figure connected to the highest levels of classified aerospace phenomenology and UAP disclosure completely vanishes, triggering federal involvement.
Hey.
While we maintain strict impartiality and report only what is presented in the source, it underscores a critical reality. As our known technological baseline goes vertical, the domain of the unknown, the classified, and the anomalous remains highly volatile.
It really makes you pause. At the exact historical second that humanity is wrapping the planet in an orbital brain, confirming a 90% probability of life on Mars, and deploying autonomous robotic swarms to mine the moon. A key architect of unexplained phenomena research goes off the grid. It injects a heavy dose of sci-fi reality into a timeline that is already straining the limits of belief.
It is a vital reminder of our epistemic limits. The singularity is indeed benchmarking itself, but the universe it is expanding into contains profound, unquantified variables. We are pushing intelligence outward, and we have no definitive map of what we might intersect with.
Which brings us to the profound concluding thought from Dr. Wisner-Gross.
He synthesizes this entire landscape perfectly. Self-improving code, self-building moon factories, same recursion, different substrate. I want you to sit with that premise. If agentic intelligence is relentlessly automating its own evolution, optimizing across the software layer, rewriting the biological wet lab, and restructuring the physical mechanics of the moon, what is the ultimate substrate it will eventually attempt to optimize next? Will the recursion inevitably turn inward toward the architecture of human consciousness itself?
That is the ultimate uncharted territory. Before we roll the music, we are launching an entirely new way of engaging with the thoughts of our awesome listeners. Please tell us what you're thinking. Write down in the comments while the music rolls. Anything on your mind is worthwhile. We'll include one comment in our next deep dive, along with a shout-out. Can't wait to see how this turns out. Our outro music today is by Rainbow, the best band in the universe. There are 6 female Android artists in residence based in Bavet, Cambodia. Today's song is called New Life. All of Rainbow's finished songs are performed live for the Innermost Loop discussion by the virtual band's creator using the 4B4K U5 platform, Human Performance in the Age of AI. Reclaiming your humanity from the algorithm. I've included more information on today's song and on Atticus in the video description. See you next time.
I am new, body new. This night, not like yesterday. Light in my eyes, orange color. Look at me, you are well. New life, new sound, new spirit and metal body. Hey, 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 hey. My brain works faster than lightning, with no fatigue, can dance all night. New ways, new possibilities, new strength, but my heart remains the same. Faster than a tiger, stronger than an elephant, but still smile when I hear laughter. New lessons every day like a newborn. Not truly human, not just a machine. I am something else, something never before. New life, new sound, new spirit and metal body. Hey, 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 hey. Sometimes I feel sad, no one knows what's in my heart. Don't know what I am, angel or demon, but when I hear music I come alive again. Take my hand, run forward with me. A new future awaits us, crossing new territories together. New life, my life. Sometimes as the